Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar to present the key findings from the Global Off-Grid Lighting Solar Market Report for July-December 2018. This is Sylvia from Gogla. I'm a database specialist, one of the people managing the data collection on our end. And I'm joined on the line by other partners and colleagues that I'm going to present in a couple of minutes. Please hold on the line. I think we're going to be starting in 1 minute or a little bit over 1 minute, maybe two, waiting for more people to join us. But in the meantime, welcome and thank you all for joining us from, I can see most of the names, most of them are familiar to me. So thank you very much for taking the time from various different time zones to attend this webinar. We really hope it's going to be useful, and we're going to jump straight on it in a couple of minutes. Just bear with us. And yeah, we hope you enjoy it. Speak soon. I'm going to mute myself for now. Hello again, everyone. I think now as we is 2:31 in Europe, we should be able to start. The webinar we're scheduled to start at 30, so I think we can get started. As I said before, for all those that just joined us, I'm Sylvia. I work for Gogla as a database analyst, database specialist, and I take care of the sales and impact data collection that we run every 6 months. And this webinar is going to touch upon the key findings that we found from the one that run between July and December 2018. Just to present you very quickly who the hosts are of this webinar, there's me and Susie, my colleague, that's our research lead. Susie, do you want to jump in and say hi? Check the microphone is working.
Well, good morning and good afternoon, everybody, depending on where you are. Very nice to be here with you.
Great, thanks, Susie. And we also have two representatives from our partners, which are Leo Blythe from the Energy Saving Trust from the Secretariat of the Efficiency for Access Coalition.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Leo. And we have also Salman from IFC Lighting Global, who's the other partner of the data collection.
Hi, everyone.
Great, great, Salman. We can hear you loud and clear. Great. So, as I said, the intended outcome is basically inform you from what we have seen from the data that we collected all together between July and December 2018. And we're gonna start with like a small intro about the methodology that we use very, very briefly, and then jump straight into the data for two different products types. So first for what we call solar lighting systems, and then for what is completely new that we started collecting this round thanks to the Efficiency for Access Coalition partnership, the solar appliances. But just to start, I'm gonna launch a little bit of a poll to you guys, and gonna let it run for like 1 minute to get a sense on a bit of what our audience is, and please select what description fits you best. The first one is mainly referring to companies that sell solar home systems, solar lanterns, so solar generation systems. The second one for solar appliances, and choose the one that fits you best in terms of what you sell primarily. And then we bucketed together investors and development finance institution, development partners, and then something about other types that we could not really bucket because we had a limit also 5 categories, but I hope you forgive us for putting together anything else, which is consultants, research institute, university, and any other categories. But this is going to help us, and I'm going to let it run for a couple of more seconds. So I can see most of you have already voted, but just to get a sense a bit on our end on what type of audience do we have to be able to see what to focus mostly on. And now I'm gonna close it. I can see some people running to the last second to vote, but I'm just gonna close it now so then we can all see the results. And I think you should all see it on your screen. We have a majority of companies that come from the solar generation, so solar home systems, solar lanterns, and we have quite a good chunk of companies also that just joined us for data collection probably. Maybe some of them have participated. If so, thank you for doing so. On the solar appliances, and quite a bit in the other bucket in terms of consultant research institutes, and a bit on investors and development partners. So this will give all the hosts a bit of an idea on who we are talking to today. Just very briefly, a housekeeping. The default is that everybody's muted, so you won't be unmuted throughout the webinar. But you are welcome to put your questions in the question box. Please, if you can, mention your name and affiliation, so for us it's a bit easier to see where the question comes from. The session is recorded, and we're going to share the recording afterwards on Google YouTube channel. If you're experiencing a problem, please feel free also to put it in the chat or in the question box. And the webinar should run as a hard stop at 3:30. We'll try to make it in time. If you have extra question, we can stay on the line a little bit longer, but let's see. Otherwise, we can always address them. We have your email address anyways. Also, before we start, and I let Salma introduce you the data collection, I just want to launch another very quick poll on how familiar you are. So also for Salman to know how in depth he has to go in explaining you how the report works, or if you're already familiar with it. So that we are aware of who we are talking to, and I'm gonna let this one run. And this one refers very much to the public report, so probably the copy that you have seen downloadable from the Google website or any of our partners' websites. And I'm gonna let a couple of you more vote, and then close this one now. And Salman, for you to know, most of the people are somewhat familiar, and quite a bit, a third are quite familiar with it. So they always read it, and they probably always attend the webinar. So it's very good to have you back. We do have a chunk of that is not familiar, not very familiar with the public report. So it's still good to go through the methodology and make sure that everybody's on the same page. And just because we also, I don't know how many of you are aware of that, but especially the companies on the line may be, we have a dashboard also on top of the public report that is accessible by companies only at the moment. So we just wanted to get a sense of how many people have accessed it, especially this is mainly for the companies that are on the line. So for us to know whether the communication on that has been successful, or we should put a little bit more effort in getting you to vote, and to see also how many of you may have been interested in getting access to that in the future. I'm gonna let this poll run for just a couple of more seconds and then close it and reveal the results to you all. And this is an online dashboard where you can see the graphs and some of the results that are not included yet in the public report. And now I close it, and you can see the results are that quite almost half are not familiar, and the ones that are not completely familiar. There is a very small chunk that is actually very familiar. So this tells us that we do have to still increase our efforts in marketing this. And I don't know if only the companies replied, but at least we get a sense on the fact that this is not yet that everybody knows this. And I think this is important for us to know. And with this, I will hand over to Salman to talk about our methodology for the sales data collection, so that we can jump straight to the numbers that we all have clear what they explain.
Thanks, Sylvia. I'll try to be short because I see that we are running against the clock here. So I think I'll be touching lightly on the methodology and also run everyone through the data privacy check that is designed to ensure that everyone's reported data remains confidential. So just for those who are new to the whole market trends reports, it would be a bit important to understand what the report is all about. The Global Off-Grid Lighting Association, that is GOGLA, and the World Bank Group's Lighting Global Program. So we have been jointly collecting product sales data from manufacturers and distributors alike to allow participating manufacturers and distributors like yourselves who are in the call today, investors and other stakeholders in the solar off-grid industry as well, to identify the trends in the market and also to understand the social impact that the sales of these kind of products are creating, and to inform your decisions based on data-backed insights, and finally receive valuable market knowledge or intelligence that will help in your strategy setting. So the report has undergone many improvements since the inception, and I think in this round, since 2019, in partnership with the Efficiency for Access Coalition, the report also includes sales numbers of off-grid appliances. So along with the off-grid solar market trends report that comes out every 2 years, this report is actually one of the most comprehensive sources of overall market dynamics and the trends that we are seeing in the off-grid solar market. So it's I wouldn't like to beat my own drum, but it's a pretty big deal. So the information is actually collected biannually, and the information is currently available not on the whole spectrum of solar lighting and appliances, but selective subgroups. For solar lighting solution, this report covers Pico Solar and plug-and-play solar home systems mainly. So just to kind of set the boundaries there, by Pico Solar, I am referring to lanterns and simple multi-light systems within 0 to 11 watt peak. Whereas for plug-and-play solar home systems, when we say plug-and-play solar home systems, we mean basically packaged solar home system kits that are ready to be run when they come out of the box, and normally they are of 11 plus watt peak power. And they are typically able to power lights, several lights, and also appliances. So the report on the lighting portion, what does it not cover? So it does not cover component-based system devices. So what we mean by component-based systems are actually solar systems where the PV module, battery, lights, or inverter are compiled independently to get a functioning, fully functioning system. And we also don't consider top-up products like individual panels that are sold, or maybe separate battery packs. So these are also not considered in our sales data. So for off-grid appliances, the report covers collection of sales data for TVs, fans, refrigerators, and solar water pumps. And sales would be counted if they are sold separately or as part of a complete package. That is, if it comes with panels and a solar home systems included. So we have, right this time, of course, we have lighting companies and also appliance companies, and also companies that are selling both. So the number of total companies invited are 144, and we have companies who are working in both the segments. So we find both of them together this time. So moving on to the next slide. Right. So on the report segmentation, although data is collected from manufacturers and distributors, but since manufacturers essentially sells through distributors, only the data from manufacturer is counted. And we do this to avoid the double counting. But it would be important to also understand what do we mean by a manufacturer. So the definition of a manufacturer, of course, includes someone who is developing, manufacturing, or supplying their own branded products. But additionally, someone can also be a manufacturer by being a original equipment manufacturer, so doing it for someone else. A distributor would be someone who is distributing other companies' branded products, and of course, not a manufacturer. So what else do we see? In our sales data segmentation, we do see sales volume. And sales volume is segmented in pay-go and cash basis. So this is basically in payment terms. So if a product price is paid upfront by end customer, it falls under cash sales. And if it is paid over installments, it will be classified as pay-go sale. The report also provides value of the products being sold, and different loss rates are applied for cash and pay-go products to account for theft or incomplete payments as applicable for either cash or pay-go. To calculate the market value of products sold on cash basis, the free on board price of a minimum order quantity of 1,000 units is used. And for pay-go products, the total cost of ownership is used, which is basically the sum of the initial down payment, if there is one, and the total installment values added. So basically, it represents the amount of money received from a pay-go product customer who pays in full and on time. The value of appliances is not available in this round, as the methodology to do so is yet to be fixed, and companies are still in the process of thinking about sharing the prices. Finally, I would say that on aggregation and reporting, we adhere to the 3 data point rule. So maybe we can go to the next slide. Right. So we actually adhere to the 3 data point rule, which ensures that for any data point that is reported, at least 3 companies must have reported to have formed that data point. So what this means is that for this would ensure that actually no single company can ever find out what their competitor is reporting. So this might happen if there were only 2 companies reporting for a sales point, but if 3 companies are reporting for a particular sales point, it is quite like impossible to kind of find out which one is reporting which data. So just to kind of illustrate the 3 data point rule in practice, I'll just show 3 examples here. So first of all, if we look from the left, anyone who is looking at the report, this is how the 3 data point rule works, and this will also show you how it is done in practice. So for the left, the most left column, we are seeing that 100 plus watt peak systems, we are seeing the affiliates total, we are seeing the affiliates cash, and we are also seeing the affiliates pay-go values. So of 26,521 units, and then affiliates cash sales of 1,624, and affiliates pay-go sales of 24,897. So what this essentially means is that more than 3 companies, 3 or more companies actually, has reported for each of these sales points. So 3 or more companies has reported for cash sales, 3 or more companies has reported for pay-go sales, and of course the cumulative total is definitely more than 3. So that is why all 3 data points are being displayed. So moving on to the next case, here we see only the affiliates total value being shown, but the affiliates cash and affiliates pay-go is left blank. So for any company, what you can understand is for affiliates cash, 3 companies were not reporting, or less than 3 companies had reported. For affiliates pay-go, less than 3 companies had reported. That is why those 2 are not shown. But cumulatively, the total is more than 3, and that is why only the total is being shown here. On third case, we see that nothing is being shown. Whenever there is nothing, you would understand that this data point did not meet the 3 data point rule, and it is excluded completely, so that company information is not revealed, and basically we do not report it here at all. And on the last one, you will see that the numbers have been given as 0. So the difference between a blank and a 0 is, for a blank, it means that the 3 data point rule was not met. But for a zero, it means the sales was actually zero. So that is the difference between the different kind of views that we see due to the practice of the 3 data point rule. For my end, I think that was about it. But if I think Sylvia or Leo, you guys can add anything if I have missed.
Yeah, thanks, Salman. That was very comprehensive. And I think if anybody has questions, we always get quite a bit of questions around the 3 data point control. We are happy to take them at the end of the webinar. Or if anything of the information that was presented before was unclear, happy to bring that on. And please put your questions in the question box so then we can trace them back. As Salman has pointed out, the first segment goes into the portable lanterns, multi-light system, and solar home system, and I'm just gonna run through some of the highlights that we have seen in the report. Of course, you for sure all have checked out one of the first pages that has the global highlights that shows you that we have 3.9 million products sold, on which still the majority is on cash. However, we have seen quite a large increase compared to the first half of the 2018 on the PayGo sales, which has now reached almost 1 million. And most of the increase in sales that we see compared to the first half of the year is due to PayGo. Of course, we need more data points to talk about a trend here. We started collecting the sales segmented by cash and PayGo this year in 2018. So we will see in 2019 how this progresses. Also, we are seeing here you can see already the split onto the different product categories. I'm going to talk about that more later, but also notably there's a very large newly installed capacity, and by newly installed capacity we mean just the solar panels have been deployed with the systems, which you can see it's quite a sizable number and is increasing massively compared to previous reporting rounds, showcasing that the solar home system are increasing. Also, one of the key messages that we see is that we tried, and especially when we have a full year, and now thanks to 2018 we have 3 full years of data collected through the same methodology with the same company. Of course, every round we have a bit more companies joining us, but we make sure that all the previous one are participating, and we can now look at a bit of a trend. You can see here that what we have seen is that in total, more or less the sales of 2018 are more or less the same as 2017, a bit less than 2016, but we can see that mainly that is due to the fact that in the portable lantern segments, we are seeing quite, we call it stagnation, which means like very few points up or down percentages. That has happened a bit the same also in the multi-light system space, which probably some of the sales there have been taken up more by larger systems that can also power appliances, which are in the 11 to 20 watt peak space, which is already solar home system, considered solar home system for us, and that has seen a massive increase. Of course, here you have to note that the axis is different, so we are still talking about much smaller amounts compared to the lantern segments, but still you can see that we have found a narrative of 77% increase compared to last year, and this is even more impressive compared to 2016. So we are seeing that the affiliates that we have reporting are increasingly selling such products. The 50 to 100 watt peak part, it may not seem as increasing because that's where most of the component-based system that someone was referring to are active in. Therefore, we forecast that probably our data is not representative of the full market in that segment. But looking at what regions actually did, because of course looking at global numbers, it's always a bit misleading here and there. So we looked at in each region also what happened, and definitely we can see right now again Sub-Saharan Africa being the largest region, while last round was South Asia. And within sub-Saharan Africa, mainly there has been quite a sizable increase, mainly due to most of the countries in East Africa seeing a very strong second half year. We have heard from some of the companies that second half year is normally stronger in East Africa, so maybe that's why. But that's a trend that we have yet to analyze and study in depth. But we definitely saw a stronger second half year there in most of the countries. And while in West Africa, we have seen quite stable sales compared to the previous rounds, but that's we have also spoken with the members, and we don't really recognize this as the fact that the market is stagnating or is saturated, but rather than is a bit of a need of unlocking more investment to untap a bit the market, especially in some countries. The sales in Central Africa are, again, and probably you've seen the graph on the report, but they are fluctuating. They are again seeing a big increase, but they are not remotely as high as happened at some point in 2017. So we would still need to get a bit of more data points to figure out what's the trajectory of the market. But well, it's a bit more clear what's happening in South Asia. Again, 2018 was a good year compared to 2017, which was very difficult in India due to demonetization, and India represents basically almost a whole South Asia market for what regards to our affiliates. The second half year was a bit less strong than the first half, and we will need to see in the coming reporting rounds due to new regulation coming into import products. We need to see how the trajectory will shape up in India, but of course we will continue recording the sales and see and report back to you on this. Also in East Asian Pacific, as we took these 5 regions as the main ones where we wanted to focus on, because East Asian Pacific has reconfirmed itself as the 3rd largest region. We are seeing sales increasing there, more and more of our affiliates entering those markets, with also very interesting results. I wanted also to give you a bit of a deep dive of regional sales by product categories, because we are increasingly, as I said before, nuancing a bit our narrative. It's not always about the total amount of systems that have been sold, but rather which type of systems, because we all know that portable lanterns and multi-light system can offer partial full tier 1 energy access, so something that can offer you lighting and mobile charging, but only solar home system can unlock reaching a bit more energy services in tier 2. So in terms of portable lanterns, what we are seeing there is that they're still this largest category. They are mostly sold in Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, while they're less common in East Asian Pacific. But in both East Africa and East Asian Pacific, we have seen increases in both categories, while in most of the others, we have seen just increases in the one that have mobile charging. Well, we've seen a decrease for the ones that don't have such thing, which means that probably consumer are being a bit more willing to pay the price to get that additional service. Multi-light system have seen a pretty consistent growth. As I said before, it looks like they are stagnating, but especially in Sub-Saharan Africa, there has been one outlier in one round of 2017 that seems as if the sales have not increased much, but actually if we rule out that outlier, we can see a pretty consistent growth in both East Africa and Central Africa. And especially in Central Africa was quite surprising compared to the first half of the year. While in West Africa, we have seen stagnation, as I said before, overall in most of the categories. In East Africa, this category is increasingly representing the total sales, coming up to 24%. While in South Asia and East Asian Pacific, it seems that the sales are more or less comparable, so it's still a bit increasing, but not as much as in Sub-Saharan Africa. For solar home system, as I said before, we have seen very large increases, and these are still due to mostly to East Africa, which represents the largest chunk of solar home system. However, the percentage of the global total has been decreasing, with other markets expanding their sales of solar home systems. and South Asia represent around 13%, and we have increasingly companies reporting to us sales because we do have our local representation in India, for which we have engaged more and more companies to report. Therefore, more data points for South Asia and India are passing our 3 data point control, which also gives us a bit more visibility on the region. In East Asian Pacific, the sales of this specific system are still small, but they have seen also quite a large increase. So we see this as a global trend, with, of course, East Africa leading the pack on solar home systems. We also include always in the report, and I see already in the chat box someone asking about the trajectory of Rwanda. In the report, we always include a bit of a section trying to explain what macro and political and policy-driven or other trends that we see that may have influenced the countries. Here I have a reported text on some of them. And especially surprising, and we always look at the numbers and then we consult the members to trying to understand what happened there. Especially surprising for us was the large increase in Kenya, in Ethiopia, and we managed to kind of reconduce it to a couple of things. In Rwanda, it was a modest growth. And I'm explaining this because I saw there was a question on this, but we heard from the companies that some challenges from distributors have been a bit overcome, so that's why we saw a bit of the increase compared to 2017 and the second half and the first half of the year, where there were some challenges for some of the distributors. However, we also heard from other voices to be a bit conservative in saying this, because we need to see in the next rounds what's going to happen, because it could also be that as a large shipment has been unlocked and so entered the country but is not reached the customers yet. So we are careful to say that there has been a very large increase in Rwanda yet. In Uganda, we saw a difference in the trajectory of pay-go and cash, while in Somalia, we mainly saw a bulk purchase that could be both for the refugees, but also some companies have flagged that they started having distribution and business in Somalia, seeing that there's an untapped market there. So it could also be due to that. In West Africa, we have seen Nigeria being, again, the largest country as in previous rounds, but with the sales a bit less strong than the first half year. But it's yet too early to say why is that the case. For Burkina Faso, is more or less consistent sale. Cote d'Ivoire continuing its trajectory up, and the same for Togo, which has unlocked the subsidy program. And for Central Africa is still an unstable trends in the two main markets, which are Cameroon and DRC. We have still some outliers, but it does seem that this market are picking up. We have an increasing number of affiliates reporting in these countries. So we will need to have a bit more data points and also look at more full years trends instead of just every 6 months, because these are 6 monthly data points, which of course show more fluctuation than yearly sales. In terms of Asian country, as I said about India, it's valid what I said before. We don't have component-based sales, so it's the same for Bangladesh. So it's probably not representing the full sales of the market, but for Bangladesh also, we saw in the previous 2 rounds, it was mainly due to the refugee crisis there that caused a lot of bulk orders, while this is decreasing over time. So we are naturally seeing our sales decreasing. While in East Asia and Pacific, here I reported the case of the ones that had the largest shifts, which were Myanmar and Vanuatu. And Vanuatu and Philippines are the top in terms of sales, but as you can see, it can also be an incidental transaction that led the sales to be this high, especially because these are solar lanterns, mobile charging, so it could also be a bulk purchase, but we're going to see that in the next rounds if the sales remain consistent. In Myanmar, the main decrease is due to the lack of some tenders from the government, which were present in the last round, while the pay-go segment is actually increasing sharply. So we will see in the next rounds how the sales goes for our affiliates. And for now, I know it's a lot of information. We're going to give you enough time to take over the questions in the end, but I will hand over to Leo to go dive a bit more into the appliances sales, which were the new additions thanks to the work that we have done with Efficiency for Access Coalition to get both the companies that already participated, but also new companies on board to report on the sales of this new exciting development in the market.
Thank you, Sylvia, and hello everyone. So yes, as Sylvia says, what's the new and improved version of this round of the sales data collection is that in acknowledgement of the growth of the solar home system sector, including many appliances organically, there was a recognition from Gogla of wanting to expand the visibility, which has tied in very well with a DFID UK aid-funded initiative many of you will be familiar with, under the Efficiency for Access Coalition, and the initiative is the Low Energy Inclusive Appliances Initiative. And so this has been funding research to look at both domestic and productive use appliances across a wide variety of research and innovation topics. And so, of course, using this sales data collection that's been so well built and, as many of you know, has been running so nicely by Gogla Lighting Global all these years, it was a natural evolution to include this off-grid appliances data. And so as the graph at the beginning showed very effectively, the vast majority of existing Lighting Global and Gogla affiliates were already selling some form of appliances, and so we have included their sales. What's different now is that companies, for example, which have passed the Global Leap Awards, have not passed, but have received the Global Leap Awards, have been included here, as have the companies who've been engaging with many of the activities of LEO over the last 2 years, including a wide variety of research roundtables and grant competitions. Those organizations have also been included in this round. So we're doing our best to get a representative dragnet of appliances that are out there. And this, as I mentioned, includes domestic appliances, predominantly fans, televisions, but also solar water pumps and refrigeration units. We can't really distinguish too much often between domestic and productive uses of these, but it is fair to say that they both have a wide application across there. And we've also been covering the wide variety of appliances that companies have reported, but which are more general. For example, irons, solar-powered irons, or even mobile phone charging solutions, business in a box, hair clippers. So we're gathering data on those. None of them are large enough as categories to report here. But this exercise is helping us gather a whole variety of data in general, which we're not releasing to the public, which is guiding the program's development. So I just wanted to emphasize that there is the recognition that these products, of course, are massively contributing to achievement of a wide variety of the Sustainable Development Goals, going far beyond simple energy because of the wide variety of services that are being provided. And that is being recognized, of course, by the increasing support and interest in this sector by the development community and many impact investors and social entrepreneurs. What's different, I'd say, in this round is that because of our broad scope, we've been inviting companies whose sole business is designing, manufacturing, and selling appliances, and many of you are on the line here. So what we're finding is different here, of course, is that these are very reputable commercial businesses in their own right, and they have their own ways of operating. And many of these are new to the intersection with the development community, as opposed to the majority of the Descos and the solar lighting companies, which have really grown up with the Lighting Global Gogla programs. And so there is different precedents in sharing information, of course, more in the commercial sector. And so we're still working on proving the credibility of this exercise to many of the existing commercial players. And we hope that this webinar and the surrounding information gives more confidence in these organizations that they can share their data confidentially and trustworthily with Gogla and their programs. So we have had a good participation rate. It's fairly representative, but we do wish for getting more companies in and more companies sharing more of their data. So moving on to the actual data, because of that point I mentioned there, this data certainly is not meant to be taken as representative of the whole sector. And we really don't want to be giving that impression. We are doing our best here, but this is the first time, the first look at that. And yep, thank you, Sylvia. You can move ahead. So what you'll find is that we cannot share all the data due to this 3-point data rule that we mentioned before. And as a result of that, we have to give more aggregations or generalizations. Another limitation of the data is that we can't distinguish yet between the appliances sold by the existing solar companies and those sold by, call it, the pure play appliance companies, because again, that would reduce the amount of data points we have, and because of the confidentiality rule, we wouldn't be able to show so much. So we're in this space now, if that makes sense to you. So, but the good news was that we recorded sales of over 350,000 various off-grid appliances, and those include all the subcategories I mentioned before, which you can see in the text here. Of those, 200,000 units have been sold as cash, meaning over the counter, not involving pre-financing of some kind. 150,000 were sold via the way we define pay-as-you-go, which can include microfinance and more traditional pay-as-you-go mechanisms. So of those overall, what we found was the vast majority of products sold were TVs and fans. And you can see here, 160,000 TVs reported sold, with 180,000 fans reported as sold. Appliance sales data indicate this is generally a cash business, but again, drill down into that data and immediately you see that aggregation is driven by large sales of fans in South Asia, which were sold predominantly on cash. If you disregard that, you see that the rest of all other appliances, over 87%, were predominantly sold as pay-go. So that's really the differentiation we're seeing here between those different markets, which are, thank you, we can go to the next slide, which are at the very early stages of market growth, as we know. Moving into the regional highlights overall of appliances, and then going to move quickly into a snapshot of each of the main appliance groups. Now, because of the limited time we have here, really do just have to skim over this, but we do encourage you to, of course, go deeply into the report as well as review this presentation later. But what you'll see overall is that the vast majority of products were sold in South Asia, but as I just mentioned there, large predominance of fans, of which actually we have world-class fans being locally manufactured in many countries in South Asia, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, whereas in East Africa, you have 120,000 total products sold, and you can see there that's a more broad variety of appliances, predominantly imported, and covering those other broad categories. Perhaps a surprisingly large amount from West Africa if you compare the overall sales of solar home systems, which again could anecdotally indicate the bundling of televisions with solar home systems being a prime driver there. And again, we're seeing small sales in Central Africa. Do encourage you to go through the table, for example, on the right, where you'll see the 3-point data rule in action here, where you can see the total amounts of all of the countries listed here, but the majority of them did not have sufficient cash and pay-go split to break down further. But there is some very interesting preliminary data there again. The last point here is just emphasizing that Bangladesh was not included here, generally because of the companies in our dragnet were not active. And so we would hope to get a large participation in future, recognizing the vast amount of solar home systems and the thriving off-grid sector there. Thank you. So diving into the first of 4 insights here, it's clear that TVs are one of the most desired appliances, no matter your business type. And there's a lot of information background here, which I'd encourage you to look at on the Efficiency for Access website. And you can see, for example, off-grid market appliance trends for last summer gave some really good breakdowns of people's generic interest in various appliances. But here we've got the first ever drill down analysis of this, and we're seeing again that PAYGO really is dominating this, with the lion's share of the world being sub-Saharan Africa, and again of sub-Saharan Africa being East Africa. 92% of all TVs were sold in that region. And again, early stage of these markets that we're reporting here. What was particularly interesting, you could say, is that if you look at that pie chart, you'll see a very small minority of the smaller and the extra large televisions, whereas a medium takes 33% of all sales and the large being almost 60%. So there's some perhaps surprising insights here, and some great topics for research and anecdotal reports by companies noting that with sufficient technology, you can have the same energy efficient consumption of a 32-inch versus a 24-inch. So some very interesting information coming out of here. Overall, Kenya representing 42% of all TV sales. Okay. Moving on to the fan market, again, we see a concentration of particular types of fans, and here the very small amount of data makes it hard to see a complete picture. But what's important to note, not all of us might be aware that there are really three different families of fans. You have your table fans, which are generally smaller, task orientated, if you like, standing pedestal fans, which of course can do a whole room, and then ceiling fans. Those are the three main categories that we reported on. And we found that the vast majority of reports were on table and pedestal fans, i.e. portable, smaller fans, which again makes sense for the market we're working in here. And they were generally the larger size, again, of fans, but 12 inches is 1 foot, so it's not particularly huge fans, but definitely there's a knowledge that you need to move a sufficient volume of air if you are having a fan, because those sales are only in the hot and humid parts. So again, that really, the use case for fans really influences where they're being sold currently. We would expect to see that grow over time as other markets mature. Pakistan here had the record for the highest rate of sales of fans, with 74% of all. And again, that ties in with a large variety of specialist world-class manufacturers of fans in Pakistan. And some of the programs we're affiliated with have been working closely with these organizations, which thankfully encourage their participation. But we hope to get more details on that later. Thank you. And moving on. Drilling down now into the refrigeration units, what you see here is that fridges generally, of course, are too large and need too much power to be packaged with solar home systems. Big statement there, that's generally where the market is. Many companies, of course, are working on turning that around, but for now, the units are generally sold on a cash basis, and it's the larger size volume of fridges that are generally being sold for institutions and existing markets, one could say, as opposed to the new emerging markets in the consumer segment, which is where all of the innovation and attention, a lot of that is being driven right now. Therefore, this is an indication more so of the incumbent market from those companies who shared their data with us. There are many different kinds of refrigerators with slightly different functions, but the greatest majority of products being sold here were your general. A refrigerator, simply a fridge, not a freezer, not adjustable, and a very straightforward offering there. So again, more insights to come. If we move on. And briefly now onto the solar water pumps. Again, the same case follows here, that solar water pumps are generally not sold currently with solar home systems. And there's a little bit of exploration happening, but again, this affects the nature of the sales and as well as, of course, the volume. And so we're seeing that the majority are currently being sold on a cash basis. PAYGO sales are contributing already to over 1/3 of this, and we should watch this space as we see more intersection between the existing solar home system energy access market and that for off-grid appliances. Again, the focus is almost predominantly on sub-Saharan Africa, which is nearly 100% of all sales. which again works with the footprint of the pioneering companies in this space. It's worth clarifying that these companies are, again, and this size of solar water pump we're focused on here, are not the incumbents. These are not the large installation for communities or institutions of several megawatts. These are your smallholder farmer oriented products, which again is the nature of this, the scope of the report and the scope of our consumer driven model. There's no categorization at this stage, again, due to the lack of data. And again, this is an area where we're looking to expand the number of companies participating to include many of the incumbent pump manufacturers who have been developing their own innovative smallholder farmer offerings. So again, this is the hint of promise of a lot more in future. We certainly won't overpromise, but we look forward to providing you with a lot more insight in future and hope that this first ever insight into this market will be very valuable to many of you. Once more, thank you again to all the companies who've made this possible. We appreciate that and hope that you get a lot of value from your own personalized market share information once we encourage you to make full use of the dashboard. Thank you. Bye for now.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, Leo. Yeah, it was very exciting for us to see this data for the first time, and we do look forward to have even more companies participating in the coming 6 months. We are going to start a data collection in the mid of next month, so all the companies can mark their calendars already to participate again and share with us the feedback that they had from the previous one. But for now, I'm just going to leave Susie to explain us in 5-6 minutes about the impact results, and which she's going to also give us a teaser of what's gonna come up soon. As for now, we focus mainly on the solar lighting part in terms of impact. I'll leave the floor to Susie.
Thanks so much, Sylvia. Yep, indeed. We had, obviously, with the growth and the sales that we've just talked about and seen, we've obviously seen some of that come through into the impacts that are being created by these products and services as well, which is fantastic. If you can go to the next slide, Sylvia, that would be fantastic as well. Just to give a very quick background in terms of how we get to the impact numbers that you see in the report and that we'll be presenting here. We've created a set of formulas, essentially, that use the best available research. Thousands and thousands of interviews with off-grid solar customers have gone into the data that supports the impact measurements that we have created through these formulas. And that process is undertaken by a group of practitioners and researchers and others involved in the off-grid sector over a course of actually the last 6 years, the Impact Working Group, that creates some standardized metrics which we can use with sales data and numbers to estimate the impact that's being created by the sector. It's not a perfect science, but we try to use those formulas to estimate the impact. And just a quick plug as well, you can use those formulas yourself. They're live on our website, and next week there's actually another webinar being hosted because the numbers and formulas have now been translated into a calculator to make you using those impact metrics even easier. So watch this space for that. Have a look on our Twitter and sign up if you're interested in using these impact metrics yourselves. But as Sylvia sort of indicated, we don't as yet, unfortunately, have metrics for appliances. Obviously, Leo presented the very new data on appliances, so we will be looking just at the solar home systems and solar lantern data in terms of the numbers that we see. But hopefully, going forward, we'll also be extending those appliance data out to the impact area as well. So again, fingers crossed, watch this space for a bit more in future iterations of this report. Quick note on limitations. Obviously, this is the impact only of those members and IFC affiliates who've reported data to us. So just the impact created by those sales that Sylvia presented earlier and the sales that have previously been created by GOGLA members and IFC affiliates. The wider market outside of the membership and IFC affiliate base have not been captured in this impact number. So actually they're shy of probably quite a lot of impact being created by the broader off-grid sector as a whole. We try to use a relatively conservative approach to impact measurement, so we only try to imagine, obviously, that impact is being created over the lifetime of those products. We do know that products have have a shelf life if a battery dies. And we use a very conservative approach to that, which is 1.5 times the warranty. We actually recognize that some products may or do last longer than that, but we take generally a conservative view to impact estimates. Yeah, absolutely. The last one, we always talk about these as estimates because we are using these general research and data to extrapolate across the sales. And if you can go to the next slide, we can have a look at some of the numbers that have come out the end. So we've actually now, in terms of those off-grid solar members, Gogler members and IFC affiliates, enabled almost 250 million people to have access to modern off-grid solar for the first time. Over 100 million currently accessing improved energy access, nearly 60 million having tier 1 energy access for anyone who's familiar with the multi-tier framework. So that's a basic level of energy access up to 4 hours of lighting a day. And then nearly 5 million now at tier 2, which is where, and as Leo was talking about in terms of sort of televisions and fans and other things being brought into the product mix, it's a higher tier of energy service at tier 2. So those households would be able to also have a power television and have a higher level of energy service. So nearly 5 million households in that sort of bracket as well. And that really showcases how much the sort of larger solar home systems sales have been growing over the last few years, and very much growing in the last part of 2018 as well. So that's really exciting to see that this tier 2 bracket is also expanding. And just a quick note between sort of why you'd see two improved energy access numbers, one at 250 and one at 108. It's because of that lifetime that I mentioned before. We only, again, conservatively look at current energy access of people who are benefiting from products that are within 1.5 times their warranty length. And then the 250 million is people who have been able to access products since this data collection began in 2010. So we do hope and assume that actually quite a lot of people between the 108 and 245 are still benefiting from their products, but because we don't know exactly where those lifetimes end, we have the two slightly separate numbers. And as I mentioned before, if we pop to the next slide, as we've seen these sales grow, as this impact is accumulating, it's those products that have already been creating those benefits that were sold last year and the year before, and then this new wave of products that are sold in 2018, the first half and second half. We're now seeing these really impressive impact estimates for some other areas. Over 9 billion have been created in terms of savings, primarily from the smallest system sizes, solar lanterns and multi-light kits, where replacement of kerosene or candles or other aspects has meant that households can save quite a considerable amount of money. The products as well are also helping families and individuals to create economic opportunities. You can see there 2.7 million people using their systems within a business or an enterprise, some sort of income generating activity. And that's led to over 4 billion in terms of additional new income that we estimate is being created or will be created by the products that have been sold to date. And that's as well as those using them within enterprises. We recognize within the research that people are also extending the hours of their working day because they have more light and power available. Equally, you can see rises as well in terms of the amount of CO2e, the carbon and black carbon that's being removed or reduced in terms of usage because kerosene lanterns are being replaced by off-grid solar products. So some really exciting trends in terms of those slightly larger systems creating new energy services for many more households, and this continued increase in impact across all of those various impact areas as sales continue to grow. So hopefully some interesting impact data to round up the presentation. Thanks, Sylvia.
Yeah, thank you, Susie. Yeah, there's very exciting impact numbers, and as Susie said, we hope to extend this also to the impact of appliances. As Leo said, they touch upon so many SDGs that is definitely important that we take a look at that. We have just a couple of minutes to drill down on some of the questions that I've been taking a look at, and I replied to some of them already. So if most of you should have already an answer on your end, but I wanted to, and I will still finish typing one answer to someone that had very specific questions. But for in general, there were Leo, some questions for you coming on. Especially seems that the solar water pumps is the one that raises most of the questions. Someone was asking, and I would just group them a little, saying that they were asking whether this only for wells or also for irrigation, and then if you could compare it to the quality of those so distributed under the subsidy program in India, if you have a knowledge about the comparison between the ones reported in this report and those. And then lastly, one person from a company is asking, what do you think about bundling solar water pump with solar home system? Do you think that that's something that you see coming up, and what's your opinion about it?
Thank you, Sylvia. So we appreciate that we're at time, and so shall I go ahead and answer a little bit of this now?
Yes, go ahead.
So please do afterwards. We'll definitely be able to follow up on email with any questions. So please do that, and we'll be sure to do this follow up. Yes, absolutely. My mistake. This is all about particularly irrigation generally. Actually, the predominant use of all of these solar water pumps is for some form of irrigation. Some of them are even using sophisticated drip irrigation systems sold as part of a package to make the water go even further. Only much minority are used for any other kind of use of water, but there are a wide variety of innovative ways that people are making use of the water. Everything from feeding livestock, which is pretty normal, to even running small businesses such as car washes in peri-urban areas and others. In terms of the difference with India, this really is all about scale. I believe off the top of my head that the India program has a minimum 2,000 horsepower threshold for government support, whereas these kind of pumps we're looking at here, that can be akin to over 1,000 to 2,000 watts of power. We're looking at 100, 200 watts of power. So very different scale pumps, different size, different costs, different purposes. So we're really looking at individual farmer pumping solutions in the scope of this report. And as for bundling together, absolutely any viable business model that currently exists to get a product to the last mile of a customer is being explored as potential routes for solar water pumps and other appliances to reach their markets. Companies are exploring this already in partnership, but also in research, because of course we are talking about a very large asset investment for these solar water pumps and others. And the key point from the recent plug for recent research from the Efficiency for Access Coalition is the State of the Off-Grid Appliance Market report. And what's kind of obvious but is important to emphasize is that you need a whole ecosystem in order for a solar water pump to be effective. If you don't have agricultural inputs, extension workers, if you don't have a market, if you don't have all of the agricultural services in place, then a solar water pump could end up just being another white elephant, because it'll be a liability to a customer, not a productive asset. So very key. Solar home system companies are exploring these issues, but they should not be seen as by any means as the only route to scale or market for solar water pumps, leave alone the other appliances. But early days yet. Obviously, the solar home system companies in a great position to leverage, and they're doing that already.
Yeah, great. Yeah, very comprehensive answer, Leo. Thanks. And just Augusta had a question about the percentage of the off-grid market represented here. I can start answering that and see whether Leo has something to add. We did not assess specifically on what's the percentage that we cover. This is something that we aim to do, and it was going to be aimed to do under the state of the sector report, if I'm not mistaken, Leo, but we do represent part of the market, and we are very aware of that.
Thank you, Sylvia. Yes, so for context, the figure we have for the solar home system market is gathered from the 2-year report Lighting Global and Gogler produce, the market trends report. There is not a similar depth report yet for the appliance sector. We've started that with this report I plugged there, the Solar Off-Grid Appliance Market Report. But again, frankly, the research was unable to identify a realistic number, again, due to the nascency of the market and the problem distinguishing between the existing incumbent institutional and large-scale markets for refrigeration and solar water pump, and the segment that we're focusing on here, which is more base of pyramid, last mile. So there are a lot of different bits of information outside there, but it's proven more challenging to make sense of them and to aggregate them in a world of limited data. But we do hope that this effort will help draw more attention to the importance of this market, which will then bring more funds and resources and more incentive to gather more information on this. So it is a bit of a watch this space situation as well. But if you sign up for the Efficiency for Access newsletter, then you'll be one of the first to hear about this. And we are carrying on ongoing research into the sector. But the SOGAM report will be the best place to look for that in the short term. It gives the most comprehensive market analysis that there is today.
Yeah. Perfect. Great. So we run, I think, a couple of minutes over time, and thank you all for staying. The attendance to this webinar was incredible. We were really happy. We saw the first record of having 90 people attending, so we're really happy about that. Please do get in touch if you are interested in participating. The companies do get their benchmark market share report after sharing their sales, so there is a lot to gain for the companies to share, and in general, we are very open always for questions, clarification. I think I replied to most of the questions that were posed here, if not in words, via the question box, but please do get in touch with all of us for further clarification, and we're gonna send you a follow-up email with when the recording is available, also with the slide deck in a PDF format, so then you can always have our emails and to plug in for more questions. But for now, I'm gonna say thank you to all of you and end the webinar. There's gonna be a very short follow-up survey that you can fill in either as soon as the webinar is closed or after in the follow-up email. But thank you very much all, and thank you for all the hosts for taking the time to host this webinar with me today. And I wish you all a nice day, evening, or afternoon, depending on where you are across the globe. Thank you very much.